Welcome, everyone. I think the majority of the participants have joined, so Agnes, over to you.
Thank you, Sophie. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being with us today. From the Brazilian Chamber of Commerce for Belgium and Luxembourg, Brascam, we value to provide hands-on information to facilitate business activities with Brazil. In that context, we have the pleasure to organize today, together with our speaker, Ebury, and with the support of UX and Hub Brussels, this webinar on optimizing payments and mitigating currency risks when doing business in Brazil. Just to give a bit of context to what I'm going to discuss today, as some of you may know, restrictions on banks, international payments, currency controls mean that the entry into Brazil is not always straightforward from an outside perspective. Having said that, Ebury, a fintech headquartered in Brussels with a valuable on-the-ground experience in Brazil, will today not only walk us through some of critical issues about the monetary flow that an investor may face when trading with or doing business in Brazil, but also will provide solutions, tips and tricks to facilitate your experience or your Brazilian experience. So without further delay, I give the floor to Samuel Demey from Ebury, and I hope that you enjoy this section.
Thank you very much, Agnes. Welcome everyone to this session indeed on optimizing payments and currency risk when trading with Brazil. Who will be speaking today? First and foremost, of course, Agnes, as you just saw from Brascam. Myself being a representative of EBRI Belgium, and my colleague Rodrigo Esper with boots on the ground experience over in Brazil. As Agnes said, from Brascam perspective, they are strengthening and developing the commercial relations between Belgium, Luxembourg, and Brazil, as you may well know, and facilitating then a business network that spans across all three those countries, creating the opportunities. And that's also in this context, of course, that we came together with Brascam to provide you some insights to what is possible or what might be the pitfalls. Maybe shortly introducing EBRI as a company. We're a fintech, a fast-growing fintech, founded in 2009 in the UK by actually 4 people from the banking sector, but clearly with great success so far, as currently we're in 21 countries worldwide with over 1,100 employees, and our business model is actually quite simple to formulate. We're a wholesaler of currency, you could say. We leverage our economies of scale, leveraging this network of 16 banks we work with globally, by then leveraging, let's say, all the volumes of our customers as a broker, a go-between between these large corporates, these large institutional banks where regular, let's say, SME plus do not get access to, and then passing on some of the cost savings to our partners and our clients, of course. This success was not unnoticed, because right now we have a quite long-standing now partnership with Banco Santander, who back in 2019 bought 50.1% of EBRI's shares to facilitate our further growth, because they really believed in our business model, saw that we were succeeding in our goal of making international finance more available, more accessible, and more easy. And so far they have actually reinvested even more and are currently a 66% shareholder of EBRI, and are of course also one of the facilitators of our expansion into Latin America, hence why we opened the office in Brazil. Here you can see a bit our global footprint. We're mainly centered, of course, around the European area, but also outside of Europe. We have some important, let's say, trade corridors internationally, where we definitely also then have boots on the ground experience and people who have local knowledge of the market, who can then help you within this journey. Part of what makes us able to do the transactions, of course, with Brazil is our acquiring of BELUX, a local bank actually who helps us facilitate these international payments and who gives us the necessary, let's say, legal and regulatory requirements to facilitate these transactions. And this is, of course, also what helps us give you some unique capabilities that are rather hard to come by with traditional providers. Then cutting straight to the chase on what is, let's say, the current trade relation between Brazil, Belgium currently. As you can see, the trade has suffered, of course, as all trade had suffered from the COVID pandemic, but has actually rebounded significantly, in part, of course, helped by the Russo-Ukrainian conflict, giving, let's say, the Brazilian exports a big boost. As one of the biggest commodity players, Russia has to disappear from the regular ongoing principle of doing business here in Europe. Where then, of course, Brazil steps up with their large commodity reserves and their large, let's say, opportunities that they still provide. And you can really see this also reflected in the data. You can here also see a few of the main imports and exports, as some of you might be well familiar with, of course. From a Brazil perspective, import of vaccines, ammonium, some chemicals, as well as frozen potatoes, one of Belgium's proudest exports, I would say, as a proud Belgian myself, as well as the export from Brazil being mainly commodities then, such as tobacco, coffee, orange juice, and the like. To give you a bit of an idea of what could be potential future business you could do with Brazil, as well as what are the main players within our trade relation. Then more on topic, the FX market in Brazil, the foreign exchange market. How does it work exactly? It's a very developed market, however, also a very regulated market in comparison to Europe, where it's quite easy. Everybody knows how it works in Europe. It's all simplified to make, let's say, international trade as easy, as fast, and as transparent as possible. Whereas then the Central Bank of Brazil is quite let's say, restrictive in a sense, where they really try to control the entire market. And that's also hence why the Brazilian real is a non-deliverable currency, meaning it cannot be held outside of Brazil, which not really simplifies the process, moreover complicates this process, and where having help of let's say a partner in this journey could come in handy to really show you the ins and outs of the Brazilian market, because all the transactions between foreign currency and BRL have to be done locally with a local partner who is authorized by the Central Bank of Brazil. Hence why, of course, also our takeover of BELUX to make this possible. Moreover, all these transactions, they all require a reason. In total, there are 206 of these reasons, which further complicate, let's say, doing FX transactions. But this should not be an obstacle, and that's also where we are there to help you facilitate these transactions, because we help you with these reasons, these documents, because all transactions larger than 3,000 USD require some sort of presentation of underlying documents. Other transactions, more, let's say, structured operations, require even more documentation. And then again, there it's very very important to have somebody who helps you with these documents, because it can really be a difficult obstacle to overcome. On the first topic, of course, on the agenda, transacting with Brazil, let's first dive into the local currency of Brazil, the benefits of using this local currency. Of course, there will always be, let's say, exceptions to a certain rule of when you go local, you should go local, such as commodities. They shouldn't, let's say, deter you from exploring the Brazilian real, as it can be a very interesting currency to trade in, as well as it can have a lot of benefits to work with the local currency, because it really shows you, it shows your partner locally in Brazil, as well as it shows everyone you deal with in Brazil that you're really trying to think like a local, that you're trying to do business like someone who wants to be there on the long run. And a few of these benefits you can see here summarized. I'll go over them shortly. First and foremost, despite some people might think if I deal with euro with Brazil, I don't have any foreign exchange risk. If I deal with hard currency, my foreign exchange risk will be limited. This is often a bit of a misconception, because what will actually happen, you'll still be exposed indirectly. You will no longer see, let's say, transparently what the risk is, but you will still be charged for this risk as your counterparty, who will then be exposed because you chose to pay them in euro. They still have to do a conversion locally. They might not have the expertise, the tools, or the capability to even do anything about this risk, and they will therefore have to charge you a markup either in your pricing or through various, let's say, pricing agreements, which might not be as solid as you might think upon making a price agreement. And that's where, let's say, the indirect currency risk is not one to underestimate. For example, if you're dealing with dollars with Brazil, you'll be first converting your euro as a Belgian player to dollars, sending that dollar over to Brazil, and then locally they will once again convert that dollar back to reais, as of course, they cannot pay, for example, their employees in dollars. They will have to pay them in reais, and therefore it can be an easier step to go directly into reais, to have control, to have oversight over this transaction, over this conversion, and to have a clear indication of what does it cost, what is the currency risk, and how can it be managed from, let's say, a global perspective, not just a local perspective. Moreover, when let's say excluding this currency risk, excluding this currency fluctuations from impacting prices, you get much more price stability, as well as also you only see your prices adjust due to market fluctuations. Once again, the indirect currency risk is one that is often overlooked, and as you might have noticed, if you're already dealing with foreign currency, foreign trade on a global scale, the indirect currency risk is not one to underestimate, as you might have noticed in your price agreements with suppliers or with clients globally. Then, shortly summarizing the advantages of the local currency for local suppliers, as well as for importers. For your local supplier, it will be far more easy to do business because you're no longer giving them additional currency risk, additional barriers of doing trade. Moreover, the price stability, of course, because the price in Brazilian reais for a local supplier will be stable. It will be the same or only impacted by, let's say, market conditions, such as the price of commodities, such as the price of labor, but no longer just by a currency fluctuation. Hence, removing the need to work with a buffer in their pricing of often 5% or more, depending on the currency, to mitigate this currency risk. Again, also the advantages of local currency for your importer is that same price stability, as well as the potential of getting a better price. Hence, the FX buffer and the foreign exchange buffer that is put in the price to mitigate this risk from the supplier side can be removed. And maybe the most interesting often is the ability to hedge this risk, which will come over in a later point of the presentation, the mitigation of currency risk, as it's often not available to the local supplier because they do not either have, let's say, the expertise, the knowledge, or they do not get the tools from their local partners, where over here you might more easily find someone to help you mitigate this currency risk, as our market might be more mature or more simple to offer you these tools. The same can be said as some advantages for a foreign exporter. Let's say you're exporting to a foreign country. I'll again use a simple example of a Belgian company exporting to Brazil. It's far more easy to find local partners, or let's say local clients, to find those if you offer them or allow them to pay in their own currency. It's a bit of let's say common sense. If you get to pay in your own currency, you're far more inclined to do business because there's no longer this exchange, there's no longer this additional cost, as well as this can help you even leverage this in your pricing negotiations, because you are taking the currency risk upon yourself. Both these can help you, of course, increase your margins or increase the volumes that your clients can buy from you, as they no longer have this additional cost. A simple case to maybe indicate how could this work? What is the concrete benefit from a client, a Belgian service provider who was offering services directly in Brazil, but was charging the Brazilian entities in euro. This was giving the Brazilian entities a bit of a headache, as of course the cost for them was a lot higher if they had to pay in euro than if they got to pay in reais, as getting a hard currency is quite costly. In this specific case, it cost them about 4% to do a conversion from reais to euro. for this service provider, we went into negotiations to think about what if we invoice them in reais, but take some additional margin to compensate for let's say the cost of taking the currency risk. In this case, 3%. The Brazilian customer gets to pay 1% less because they only get charged at that 3% markup in reais and can work in its own currency, far more easy. So they are satisfied. There's only 1% cost for the Belgian service provider, as he gets transparent and far more competitive pricing from our end. And the Belgian service provider then gets to take home an additional percentage as they offset the difference between this 3% and the 1% that was already being paid. So that way, everybody in this scenario got a bit of a win. And that's one of the benefits of dealing with local currency, for example. Moving over to our second topic of the day, making faster payments. As Brazil is a highly regulated market, there's always these underlying documents required, etc. This can make making quick payments either quite difficult or quite costly, because high urgency payments are always possible, but come at little extra cost, shall we say. Generally speaking, a transaction in reais takes 2 days, in some, let's say, rather unfortunate cases, up to a week with traditional providers, where we, by aiding you in this process of dealing with these documentation, of going through the step-by-step process, we can make these payments in 24 to 48 hours, depending on, of course, the preparation of these documents. If we really have a good back and forth and a good preparation of a transaction, if you know the transaction is upcoming, that's why it's very important. Communicate about this. Let your partner know, because then you can make the necessary arrangements to make this process smooth, fast, and easy. Now you might ask, how is this process then? Good question. On the buying side of BRL, a client will be sending euro funds over to us. We will send these euro funds to our offshore account with IBRI-BEX, because we have our local entity there. Those funds will then get converted to BRL with our Brazilian entity at the agreed rate. And then from that offshore account, BRL will be sent to the beneficiary's bank account. Quite simple, quite a straightforward process, but important to note that for these transactions to happen, because there is a cutoff time and a restriction from the Central Bank of Brazil, where funds must arrive on T+1 with us, because you have to do the entire transaction process within T+2, so 2 days. We have to make sure that the funds arrive with us on, let's say, the first day, so we can, in a timely fashion, also pay out. Of course, that's also why I mentioned why it can be between 24 and 48 hours, depending on how quickly the funds arrive with us. That's usually, let's say, the longest step in the process, as weird as that might sound. So in that sense, very important. Same can be said for selling BRL. It's exactly the same process, but the direction is reversed. The sender will be sending the reais to our Brazilian account at IBRI-BEX. These Brazilian reais will be converted to euro at, again, an agreed rate. We will then receive those euros from the offshore account from IBRI-BEX and pay it out directly to our client here in euro. Again, same restrictions apply, because it's a regulated transaction, of course, by the central bank. We have to make sure that we do this in a timely fashion. Otherwise, we will be penalized. The transaction or the deal will be sold back, and charges will be applied as well. Also, some other important remarks, given the highly regulated characteristics of the Brazilian market and the Central Bank of Brazil's regulation, the following things should be also taken in account. So as said, the documentation, of course, which we will review in advance of the payment to make sure there's nothing afoul, everything can proceed smoothly and swiftly, but also FX, so limits. So the transaction volume might be limited in a sense, depending on the financials of the Brazilian beneficiary or the Brazilian payee, because these are, again, the regulations of the Central Bank of Brazil. And anytime you have specific, let's say, needs here, discuss upfront, be open about this, and we can definitely find a solution that is suited, that is all-encompassing. Again, simple example of where this might come in handy. Let's say you're a Belgian corporation with a Brazilian subsidiary. Your Belgian mother company is funding the subsidiary in Brazil to, of course, to fund and to establish foot on the ground and to establish growth. For this, giving loans, capital injections, you have a lot of, let's say, complexity in Brazil to do these structured operations. Also, high bank charges traditionally to do these operations because of the large administrative costs. And that's where a group might need some support in these operations, as well as someone who is on their side in, let's say, this transaction. And that's again where we step in, helping one hand the Brazilian subsidiary receive more funds because our charges are far lower, as well as our conversion costs will be lower. I think most valuably receiving support with these operations, receiving support with these documents, as these are perhaps the most complex operations you can do in the currency markets globally. Again, they're giving you the support, the confidence that those funds will arrive, that everything will go as planned, and that let's say the loan and the capital injection goes correctly, that there's no foul there, as well as when the time comes to repatriate funds, we can also facilitate this in an easy and transparent fashion, where both the Brazilian subsidiary can win and the Belgian mother company can win on both ends of the pond. Then coming on to mitigating currency risk, as I telegraphed earlier, that this is also quite an important point to take into account when dealing with reais. Definitely also considering, does my counterparty have access or already take this into account? How are they mitigating this risk? Is this just a surcharge in my pricing, or are they actually hedging their risk? There are some things to consider. So speaking of the Brazilian reais, it might be nice to take a bit of a step back to look at, okay, what has happened to the real, what is the macro view, as well as what are the market expectations to come. First and foremost, given COVID, given everything that has happened over the past few years, I don't think I have to remind anyone of the past few years, as we're all I think looking forward to forget them in a timely fashion. The inflation, of course, was sky high, also over in Brazil, 12% inflation at its peak. And of course, what do you do with sky high inflation, as we're currently seeing over here in Europe as well as in the US? You have to start hiking. You have to do interest rate hikes, and I think the Brazilian central bank really took an aggressive stance here. They hiked from a 2% interest rate all the way to a 13.75% interest rate in a matter of months, which is quite aggressive, but also is clearly successful in mitigating, of course, the sky high inflation, which was impacting Brazil, but perhaps also with some downsides that go along with these extremely high interest rates, as Brazil has a bit of a wider inflation target than, of course, a more developed market such as Europe. It's between a 2.5 and a 5.5% target. Currently, they're almost on target with their policy, but of course, you have to be mindful of not raising unemployment too high or putting too much pressure on the financial system that your economy tanks as a consequence. So this is always a difficult balancing act, and definitely something to monitor to come, as this will impact, of course, also the interest rate differential between Europe, between America, the US dollar, and the Brazilian reais. Then coming to perhaps a more objective measure of expectations. Of course, a forecast is only as good as its latest prints. As always, to bear in mind, the most impactful, let's say, currency movements follow from unexpected events, such as the Russian invasion, for example. General stability is expected for the real, opposed to the euro. However, as we near the further end, they think that the euro, of course, will appreciate again against reais as we come out of our current inflationary spiral. Same can be said for the US dollar. However, they think the US dollar will lose a bit of value against the reais until the end of next year, or the beginning of next year, should I say. However, no matter the fact that they are telegraphing here stability, this is the graph of the euro BRL since COVID. So over the past two and a quarter years, and you can see, yeah, this is quite a wide gap. If you look pre-COVID, we were at about the 440, the 450 levels. We then spiked up all the way to almost 7. So yeah, almost 80-90% increase or decrease of value of the reais, where we're now again at a 5.60 level, somewhere in between. So yeah, these let's say different movements where the reais really loses or gains a lot of value over the course of a few years can be quite detrimental to the profitability of your project, your investments, and your plans in Brazil. So that's definitely why, let's say, currency risk management is something you should consider, no matter whether you're dealing in euro, in dollar, or in reais directly, because this is indirectly also affecting your business. Same here you can see for the dollar, where you come from about a 4 level to all the way up almost a 6, a 5.90. Again, quite a substantial increase and quite a lot of fluctuation, as you can see. These movements, to give you a bit of an idea, over the past month have been over 5% difference between the high and the low point. So yeah, over just a few months' time, yeah, this is already a huge impact. It could be the entire profit margin of your operational activities in Brazil. So definitely always be mindful of this currency risk, look for mitigating tools, and hedge yourself against this risk, because it might be fun to be on the right side of it, but if you're on the wrong side, yeah, it's a difference between making it or breaking it. And of course, what is the solution, you might now be asking? It's actually quite simple. It's called a forward contract. A forward contract allows you to agree a price for your currency. So again, essentially, you're making a price agreement like you would with a supplier, but just for your currency. So you set a specific currency rate that you fix for a specific volume and a specific time frame. These specific volumes and timeframes are completely modular. So it's really whatever you need. Is it on 37 days or is it on 6 months, a year? All possible. Every time it's an open discussion to be had to look at, okay, what is your concrete exposure? How long is your exposure? Yeah, what is your comfortability with the risk? So you can even have some risk acceptance in this sense, a bit like with an investment you would make in stocks or bonds, where you would have 80% of your portfolio hedged, the other 20% you open up to fluctuation, for example, and it allows you a lot of flexibility in use, because we offer also flexible forwards depending on what your concrete needs are, or you really have just one fixed rate over an entire period, no matter when you make use of, let's say, this contract. For example, again, very simple example. Let's say you're a Belgian importer of some beautiful Brazilian percussion instruments. You want to maintain an annual catalog here in euro. You buy these instruments directly in Brazilian reais, because, as mentioned earlier, you see the benefit of dealing directly in reais, as you're really showing yourself as a partner as well as of course, yeah, having some additional benefits in terms of pricing and stability. However, having taken on now the Brazilian reais currency risk from your supplier, you're looking for a way to mitigate this risk, being a forward contract, a hedge. So this Belgian importer will protect his profit margins in euro terms by fixing his euro to BRL price, essentially. So no matter whether it's in reais or in euro, he has the same price. It's fixed. He still benefits from the additional benefits of having a better price, because his supplier no longer has to add this currency, let's say, premium on top of the prices to hedge himself, as he did not have access to hedging. And he gets a far more stable price, because the price will only increase when also the raw material cost or the labor cost of his supplier increases, no longer because the real moved against him or in his favor, depending on the situation. This way, the Belgian customer gets a stable euro price in the catalog as well, so the Belgian customer is satisfied. The importer has protected his margins, so he knows upfront on every product that he buys in reais what his profit margin will be in euro terms. No longer any fluctuation here. And the local, let's say, supplier in Brazil has the ease of receiving reais, of not dealing with currency risk, and gets to sell perhaps even more to this importer in Belgium. It's a win-win story. Then finally, a bit of an update on the regulation in Brazil. As some of you may know, as of 1st of January of this year, the regulation has changed a bit in terms of the currency market, the foreign exchange market. And in all sense, this is actually a positive. So it's a bit of a simplification of the regulatory framework, where in the past, as I mentioned in the start, there are 206 operations. Those still exist, but for all transactions below $50,000 value or equivalent, there will only be 8. These are quite simple natures of operations, such as import of goods, import of services, export of goods, export of services, and the like. Very simple, so you no longer need, let's say, a catalog of reasons for transactions before you can do a transaction, making it quite straightforward, making it quite easy in that sense. As well as for, let's say, the past FX spot transactions, so just let's say on daily basis, on day rate transactions, there is no longer an obligation to sign a contract for these transactions, where in the past there was. However, it still remains, of course, obligatory for forward contracts. Then, as well, for the financial operations, there's a bit of a simplification. This is don't be alarmed by, let's say, the abbreviations. These are essentially the names of the documentations and the registrations you have to do of these documents to facilitate these transactions, such as loans, such as capital injections. For loans, the name has changed slightly to basically calling it the foreign capital reporting system of a loan. Quite simply put, it looks complex, but it's actually not that complex. And also here we are there to help, where you only have to do this foreign capital reporting on loans above $1 million worth or equivalent other currency value. Same can be said then for capital injections. Again, only for capital injections above $100,000 or equivalent value will you now again need to do this documentation process, as well as this registration process. Again, we are here to help with this process. If it's unclear, if you have questions about this, my colleague Rodrigo is more than willing and capable of helping you, as he's very experienced in the Brazilian markets. And with that being said, I would also hand over to him for all your questions. So please share your questions in the chat. Rodrigo is here to answer those questions. And with that, I would hand over to him. Thank you very much.
I cannot see any questions so far.
Yes, I think because I think Samuel explained very well how it works Brazil market, and nobody having no questions to do this one. Thank you for this presentation, Samuel. Thank you for to very good presentation about Brazil. We are open here for any kind of solutions we can provide for you. Ibri, it's a company have new thinking about the market here, and as Samuel made a good presentation about Brazil, the regulation here is very strong, but we have solutions for most of kind of problems the company have here. And the most, I think in the FX transactions here, the most important is how quickly we can provide this kind of solution for you, and how quickly we can provide, improve your business, because Ibero is not just a simple company works with FX transactions or international transactions. We have to provide and provide each other, the companies. If you need something, oh, I'd like to know here in Brazil somebody who trades agricola or trades steel or trades something like that, we can use all around the Ivory for putting contact to you. Please feel free if you have some questions. Thanks for all.
Yeah, I believe our chat was unfortunately disabled. It should work now, hopefully. So maybe if you have any questions, please do share them in the chat. We are here to answer them and here to help. Thank you.
Well, I think that we still not have questions, but Samuel and then every team was a very nice presentation. Oh, maybe you have one. Let me see. We have one. Can a new exporter use every services in Brazil? Maybe to you, Rodrigo?
Yes, it's possible. No matter what the fact, if you trade currencies with Brazil, no matter what, it's a new exporter, old one, you can use the services here in Brazil, if Ivory Brazil, and we can provide everything for you. We'll open your registration, and you can provide open all regulation you need to trade with Brazil.
Thank you, Rodrigo. I think that we don't have any other questions. I'd like to thank you, Samuel and the team, Rodrigo, Pierre, for the organization of this seminar, this webinar. I think the services you provide will be very valuable to facilitate and to increase the trading between Belgium and Luxembourg and Brazil for sure. So I don't know, Samuel, if you want to move to this slide where we can present both our next webinars from Brascan and from Ivory.
Definitely. Maybe finally, just to give you our contact details, this presentation is also going to be shared afterwards, of course. So please, if you have any questions that would pop up later in your discussions internally, do not hesitate to contact us. We are happy to help and open to discuss anything and everything. Thank you. And now, as you said, indeed, Agnes, we have some upcoming webinars as well. If you would have some upcoming business or let's say existing business with South Africa, we have an upcoming webinar on this in the near term. Invites for this will also, of course, be shared. More details to follow, I would say. So definitely look out for this. And then for you, Agnes, I would give over the word to you again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then on the Brascan side, the upcoming webinar will be the first of a series of 3 webinars on the tax environment in Brazil with the new administration. So the first one will be Brazil after COVID and federal and the state 2023 elections, increasing federal government tax revenue. So it will be on the 20 April 2023, and then you can also find more information in our LinkedIn webpage, and we are going to circulate and invite later on. Thank you.
No, perfect. Then I would say thank you to everyone who attended, who joined, who was open to listen and gave us the time. And thank you very much again to Agnes, but also to the AUX and to Hub Brussels for supporting us in this endeavor. And I would say have a very nice evening or afternoon, depending on whether you're in Belgium or Brazil. And let's keep in touch. Oh, I see. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a nice evening to everyone. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you for everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.